The biggest challenge that we have is growth. And we have a lot of folks who have moved here in the last 5 to 10 years, and they have this idea of this small fishing town, this old colonial era city, and they don't realize that they're part of the in migration.
Yeah.
They want to live in a small town, and that's just not what we are anymore. We can't close our borders. We're a high growth area, and that is our biggest challenge: is how do we deal with the growth with a, a vocal community who doesn't want any more growth, even though they are part of the growth problem.
Hello, this is Doug Newell, and this is another edition of Property Pulse. Property Pulse, we explore the intersection of artificial intelligence and real estate. Today, I'm lucky enough to have Josh Dix as a visitor here. And Josh is the Vice President of Advocacy for the Charleston Trident Association of Realtors. I'm not intimately familiar with Charleston. I've been there, but is Trident sort of a suburb of Charleston, or is it like a section of South Carolina, or what's Trident?
Trident is actually an old Civil War era ship.
Is it?
That was like we have Trident Technical College. Trident appears in a lot of different names in the area.
Okay. Your old Civil War ships, I've been to visit the Hunley
Yes,
that's
sir.
there, and that's fascinating. I just encourage anybody who's down in Charleston to go visit the Hunley. I just remember a gold piece with a bullet hole in it or something that came from one of the bodies that they found on this Civil War submarine, one of the first submarines to ever sink an enemy ship. Fascinating.
Yeah.
But
And
we're here to talk real estate. So
okay.
now that I know what Trident is, can you fill me in a little bit about what you do? What are your activities as the VP of Advocacy?
Yes, sir. So we have 4 counties in our jurisdiction, almost 40 municipalities within our region, and we monitor all these local governments and even the state government on land use policy. How do you protect property rights, but also, in a low-lying area like this, like it's important to be developing in the right areas.
Yes.
And so we work a lot with our local governments on land use policy, zoning,
So,
and sort of like a catch-all is what we do. So
okay.
keeps us busy. We're all over the place, but it's an exciting place.
So, thinking about your job there, can you describe sort of a typical problem? Coming into this interview, I was thinking that somebody wants to put in a development of 200 homes or something, and maybe your job was to deal with the concerns from the neighbors or something like that. That's probably a very simplistic view of what you do. So can you fill us in a little bit about what a typical project might be?
Yeah, so we're dealing a lot with zooming out a little bit farther and looking at whole municipality zoning and land use regulation.
Okay.
We kind of set the table so that the developer can come in and build those 200 homes. But it is a lot of, just a public dialogue, working with municipal staff, elected officials, trying to get an understanding of what they would like to see in the community,
Hmm.
balancing what the community needs are, and trying to create a playing field that will encourage investment and bring those dollars into these areas.
Do you have, yeah, go ahead, please. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say our area, we have some geographic constraints. We have an ocean on one side, a large national forest just to the north of us, and then
Great.
another large national refuge, the Ace Basin, to the south of us. So geographically, we were kind of bordered in, and then you have all the wetlands and rivers and everything else that we have to deal
Yeah.
with, and you have to really get strategic with where we're developing and how we're developing. And so that's really where I come in, is on the land use and trying to make sure all the zoning matches what the
Right.
intents.
So you're operating on a much more macro level than I had imagined. You're not worrying about a right of way that somebody has going through their property and that kind of micro thing. You're thinking about, okay, here is the city of Charleston and it has so many parcels and maybe a few of them aren't developed yet. I got to believe that's pretty solidly built out, isn't it, in Charleston?
Close, yeah.
Yeah.
But we're at this phase now where it's about redevelopment and infill development. And so we had this period in our history, and this is pretty typical across America, where you have strip centers and shopping centers. Behaviors are changing. And so, how do you redevelop those areas? Providing mixed use opportunities, not having strictly a retail shopping center, but how do you incorporate housing into that?
Yes.
We have an affordability problem here and land is scarce. So how are we, what are our density requirements? How are we allowing for those types of uses to be developed? And then also, are we developing in the right places? We can only invest so much in our infrastructure. And so, we're really trying to talk now about, are we developing near existing infrastructure? Are there roads already in place? Is there adequate water and sewer? Those are the types of things that we're working on right now.
Could you tell me about any tools you might have or use that, again, computerized software or whatever? You just mentioned sewer. Do you have something that tells you where the sewers are um, at a fairly tight level of description that this house doesn't have sewer, this one does, kind of thing?
Yeah, a lot of that is captured in our GIS data and
See.
our municipalities at the county level. They do a pretty good job of tracking all that. We work with our local water and sewer distribution. We've got a couple of different ones in our area, and they have all those specs, down to a science of where these pipes are, what the size of the pipes are, the age of pipes. Where do we need to start thinking about replacement?
Interesting.
Putting in larger pipes. So, yeah, our municipalities do a pretty good job of tracking all that.
So the municipality, well, the county has the sort of system, and then the municipalities can use it in order to get the data they need to do their day-to-day operations and such. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, cool, cool. Do you have, can you tell how close is a supermarket or something like that?
But yeah, we have all that mapped out.
Good.
And so, yeah, it's about trying to identify, where do these resources, where do they exist and where do they need to go? We do a lot of calculation with our development community on, grocery stores are a big piece of that. We have what are called food deserts in our area. And you have to have a certain level of AMI, area median income, to attract those type of grocers to come to these areas. And so, how are we helping to elevate the area median income? But then you have a balancing act of not displacing the people who are already there. And
Yes.
so that's really where we find ourselves on that tightrope of, how do we encourage investment? How do we raise the average area median income?
Mm-hmm.
But also, what are we doing to preserve and protect the residents who are already in these areas that don't have access to the resources that we're trying to bring in?
Yeah. Do you have any sense as to how many people have moved into the Charleston area? Do you have any sense, not to put you on the spot here for any exact number, but have they added a congressional district or two or whatever? I just think of Charleston as booming.
Yeah, the state of South Carolina as a whole, we're a rapidly growing state. U-Haul just ranked us at South Carolina as the most inbound one-way trips of any state
Interesting.
in the country. So yeah, it's one of our acknowledgments. But yeah, we picked up a congressional district in the 2010 census. I think we'll be poised to get another congressional district in 2030 when the next
Right.
redistricting happens.
Okay.
But Charleston, yeah, we continue to grow. We were a little over 500,000 people right before 2010 in the recession, and then today our Tri County we're a little over 800,000. So we continue to
Okay.
grow. Our region we grow at about 45 people a day, net new people.
Wow.
So it's a lot of growth.
You can probably watch those U-Hauls being lined up on the highway.
Yeah, if we can, yeah.
So what do you find particularly challenging or annoying, or what's the toughest part of your job? I mean, you're herding kittens a little bit if you've got 40 different municipalities and trying to get them to coordinate and things like that. But is there some other aspect that is like, it's going to be a tough day because you've got to do something?
Well, the biggest challenge that we have is growth. And we have a lot of folks who have moved here in the last 5 to 10 years, and they have this idea of this small fishing town, this old colonial era city, and they don't realize that they're part of the in migration.
Yeah.
They want to live in a small town, and that's just not what we are anymore. And so, like last night, I was at a town council meeting and we were talking about a redevelopment of a shopping center that would have included multifamily. It would have included a quarter of the units as dedicated, deed restricted, affordable units. And it was denied because, the not in my backyard people, they show up and they get angry and loud and they just don't want any more development. Unfortunately, that's just not an option. We can't close our borders. We're a high growth area, and that is our biggest challenge: is how do we deal with the growth with a, a vocal community who doesn't want any more growth, even though they are part of the growth problem.
Is there any way to predict? And again, I'm all about data and predicting things. That's sort of what I do for a living. Is there any way to predict where you're going to run into more resistance than other places? I mean, is it somebody wanting to put a multifamily into an affluent area, or is it agriculture pushing back on somebody wanting to take 200 acres and put in 100 homes, or any pattern in there?
It's a little all of the above, to be honest with you. I mean, you have the conservation environmental group that want to limit growth. You've got the affluent communities who don't want any more growth. You have, the traditional single family neighborhoods who don't want, duplexes and triplexes in their neighborhood. So it comes from a bunch of different angles. So there's not like a singular point of friction. It comes from multiple angles at us, and we're just trying to digest it and deal with it the best we can. We have certain councils who are a little more willing to work with us. And then, we have councils like the one I was at last night that just, they say no to everything. So, but we try to keep working because there's not a lot of choice. I mean, it's a high growth area. We have some affordability issues that have started to pop up the last several years with the amount of people moving here and the available inventory. It's just becoming a very costly place to live in addition to a lot of other things. So,
Interesting. So the state's busy recruiting the Boeings and
yeah.
Volvos and so forth, and the locals are saying, "No, not so much." Got it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's been a problem of bad communication, to be honest with you, but
Yep.
at the same time, I'm a South Carolina boy. I was here, when the recession was happening. We had over 10% unemployment. We were one of the high unemployment states in the country. And so we just really wanted to recruit as many jobs as we could to address the unemployment issues. And we were very successful in that. And right now we're dealing with we're a victim of our own success.
You mentioned the sort of geographic barriers. Is there anything due west of Charleston?
Well, that's the one direction that we can go that's not obstructed, but at the same time, we really want to try to focus on infill redevelopment. I mean, there is some limited opportunity for further development. Berkeley County is really the next frontier of that's going to handle a lot of this next wave of growth that we have in our area. But one of the uh, negatives of the growth that we've had is that we've grown in a sprawling fashion, and that puts a lot of stress on our infrastructure just because we don't build and widen roads fast enough to keep up with the residential development.
Huh?
And so that, again, that's a big problem when the community, they're feeling the growth pressures from the traffic that they're sitting in every day. And that's a byproduct of we just haven't invested in our infrastructure the way we should have. And so, growing out in that fashion isn't necessarily sustainable either. Our state, a quarter of the state's economy is agribusiness. And so we don't need to continue sprawling out into the farmland because that's a big part of our state's
Yeah,
economy and livelihoods. Again, we're trying to balance all these things and still deal with a high volume of growth. But again, I would much rather have our problems than some of these states that are losing population.
absolutely. Absolutely. It's a good problem to have, as they say. Okay, cool. Any tools that you wish you had?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few services out there that digest agendas, but a lot of times it's after the fact. Like I said, we have a 48-hour rule in South Carolina. And so when that agenda pops on the municipality's site, having the time to really gather it,
Mhm.
screen it, and then digest it, 48 hours is not a long time. And so I think that's an
No,
area where technology could
that
help us in that process. There
that
are
sounds
services
promising. So
that
the agenda's
that do
actually
gather it.
agenda's actually on a website.
Mhm.
So somebody could set up a system that monitors the website, scrapes off the agenda daily or whatever, looks for it daily, and it always has something, and then maybe digests that. The agenda might include old items or a rehash of what happened in the last meeting or something like that, where you could pick up that as you were describing the place that you were last night, they always say no. Well,
Yeah.
that's in fact a fairly valuable piece of information that talking to builders, as I often do, some of them take zoning very seriously and some less so because some of them have zoning boards or whatever that always say no. And all others, it's like a cost of doing business that, oh, yeah, we'll get that rezoned, whatever. And it's just, okay, hire a lawyer, spend $500, rezoning happens, and off you go. So it sounds like there's some opportunity to scrape information. If you have 40 municipalities, then there might be 40 websites that you scrape information and have the AI digest it and organize it such that, this piece of property keeps coming up over and over and over again in the discussions or something.
Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you.
And as close to real time as you could get that is the benefit to people like me. Because like I said, the services that are out there now, we tend to get the information after the council meeting has already happened. So it
Yes.
doesn't do us a lot of good to catch things in the moment.
Interesting. Thank you. So, your organization, is it limited to those 40 communities? And is your organization growing? If I could ask, do you have any idea how many real estate agents there are in your footprint?
Our local association, we have about 6,500 realtor members, but
Wow.
we are part of the state and national association. So
Got it.
the state of South Carolina, we have a little over 30,000 members. And then the
Whoa.
National Association of Realtors, we've got about 1.4 million members across the country. So it's part of what we call the three-way agreement. And so we work in tandem with the state association, who works really closely with our state house and executive governor's office. And then you have the National Association, who's monitoring policy and regulatory policy in DC and across the country. So, we all work together to try to catch everything from City Hall all the way up to Congress.
Got it. Interesting. Can you say anything else about your background that might be interesting to the audience?
Well, I really come from a political policy background.
Okay.
I started out on campaigns in the state, spent some time in DC. I worked on Capitol Hill for a while.
Okay.
And then once I wanted to leave DC, I decided to come back to Charleston and very briefly practice real estate. But then this opportunity came at the association, and I was able to kind of marry my political background with real estate. And so I've
Yes.
been doing this for the last 7.5 years.
Have a good day, and thank you everyone who's been watching another interesting interview. This is almost an inspired way of learning an industry. I've got 26 years experience in AI, but I was attracted to the real estate area when I heard that AI hasn't penetrated it very well. Learning from people like Josh is a fun and easy way to understand the various layers. So again, thank you, Josh.